What is up, everyone? Aeneas here. It's Monday again, so let's find out what's going on in the world of Magic with another Monday Meta Update. Hello again and welcome. We are about 5 weeks into the Brothers War meta or so, and the meta has really kind of cooled down a little bit. So today we're going to talk about the standard best of one meta, standard best of three, some interesting decks from standard and historic that people posted on Twitter, and then some standard tournament results and kind of what's dominating in those tournaments. Last, we'll finish up with a little bit of news about Magic, some interesting things that happened in recent times, and maybe a few other things. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Standard best of one, diamond to mythic, we see Azorius Soldiers, Mono White Soldiers, and Grixis taking the top spots. No surprise there. Popularity still going to those aggro decks, Azorius Soldiers and Mono Red, making up nearly 30% of the meta that you'll find in the best of one ladder. That is crazy. So still, if you're playing decks on best of one, make sure you can beat aggro, because you're going to see that quite a lot. And if we look at the tier list, just overall, not just for today, Azorius Soldiers still in that top spot. Really strong, really stable, hard to beat. There's quite a few different versions of the deck, but all of them doing quite well. Yeah, 60% win rate is very, very good in best of one. Mono White Soldiers coming up second, still very respectable, very good, and Mono Red is behind that, and everything else is kind of behind that, about 54%. That's more normal, I would say. So yeah, the aggro is definitely doing the best right now. And that's just the recent week, so that's the shorter meta, but as we saw last week, Azorius was still good last week, still good now, so not a lot has changed there. I think it's just gotten even more solidified, whereas the other decks have not been doing as well. All right, and then take a look at best of three, and the story is a little bit different. So Grixis is the #1 deck right now in best of three meta, and Mardu Angels is close second, very close behind that. As we saw last time, that the Angels deck was actually doing the best overall and did quite well in tournaments as on top of that. But at least for the time being, it seems like Grixis is a little bit more popular, and yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say a little bit, a lot more popular, with nearly 50% of the best of three meta on the ladder. So if you are playing on the best three ladder, expect to face pretty much all Grixis all the time. I never thought I would say that, to be honest. Grixis used to be like the worst color pairing, and it's kind of a meme deck, but now Grixis seems to have come to power, just not in the way I had hoped or imagined, with it being basically a mid-range soup deck. So you can't win them all, but it's nice to see Grixis get a few W's in his lifetime. All right, and then looking at the best of three meta tier list, it looks like nothing is quite solidified. We see Esper Legends doing very, very well. Mardu Angels also doing very well. I'm focusing mostly on the Mythic right now, but it's pretty similar in the Diamond to Mythic range as well. So Grixis, Mardu Angels, Esper Legends, and Rakdos all kind of fighting there for the top spots. I think just because the fact that you can board in extra removal, extra sweepers, makes it so that the aggressive decks don't do quite as well in the best of three format. Whereas in best of one, they can kind of thrive because all these mid-range decks are pretty greedy in their base builds and don't have sweepers, don't have enough removal, and can easily lose on the play, that kind of stuff. So definitely not a slouch, still 60% win rate in best of three for the aggro decks, but slight edge to the Esper, the Mardu, and the Grixis mid-ranges. Yeah, still no control really that's doing anything on the ladder. The closest thing is that Grixis deck. I mean, it's like a big mid-range because they have Invoke Despair on the top, but still mid-range. And yeah, not really any control even when I'm scrolling down the list. So Yeah, seems like we're still in an aggro mid-rangey type of meta, uh, after all. But at least if you're in best of one, you can play around the fact that it's mostly aggro. All right, and yeah, looking at Twitter, there actually hasn't been a whole ton of new brews recently that I've been seeing, but I did find a few that looked kind of interesting, both in standard, historic, and alchemy. So first up is this standard green Stompy list. Um, Looks pretty standard, you know, the Curion Beast Caller, Ascendant Pack Leader, Lanolar, Loam Speaker, and they have some interesting ones with like the Primal Adversary and Cemetery Prowler, which you don't always see. Weatherlight Completed, also one that is not often seen. So I'm a little bit curious about that one. But overall, Green Stomping makes sense. Seems like it was going to be pretty good. So nice to see somebody doing well with the deck. And if you're kind of one of those people who are big Timmy and you like to cast big creatures that smash people's faces, orc, ghost mork kind of thing, then yeah, this is definitely a deck for you that you can do well with, just like this person Steel Grip was doing well with. So yeah, that's a deck you can do. All right, and then in historic, this one I thought was really cool. I'm usually not a fan of these kind of like almost infinite combo type decks, but I just thought it was cool how much of these like really cheap spells this person used. They have Piece It Together, the new like drop that gets you an extra turn when you cast 4 of them. Fiery Impulse, which is the new burns. I think I don't know if it's burn spell, but it's removal for 1 mana. And then Spell Chain Scatter, which is a spell that like copies your next spell, basically, and it's 1 mana. And then this spell, counterspell, 1 mana counterspell. So all of these 1 mana spells, and the point I believe is to like be copying and countering your own spells in order to get your grape shot centered like up to 20 or whatever and kill the opponent. And you have the Burgi, which gives you kind of infinite mana as you're casting these spells. So pretty interesting deck, very cool to see. Like this, they call it Storm because you're like your grape shot is your storm card, right? And so you want to cast like 10 spells and then grape shot for 10 or something like that. So pretty cool. Yeah, I'm surprised, but this person seemed to have a good success. They got to Mythic with this deck, so obviously has a lot of power in there. So yeah, if you love combo and you like historic, this might be one to try out, and looks pretty interesting. Okay, and then this is a standard deck. Another one that I thought was kind of cool. Um, just a deck somebody was brewing with and had a few wins with on the ladder. So you know, take with it what you will, but it looked very interesting, and I thought it was kind of a concept that we haven't really seen yet. So we've seen green white enchantments and auras, but we haven't really seen the mono green enchantments. And this one has a new card that used to be a very strong card way back in the day, but is not quite up to the power of more recent cards a lot of times. But if you can make use of the enchantment synergy part of it, then it makes a lot of sense to try to use it. So that card is the Blanchwood Armor. It's an enchantment for 3 mana, gives your creature +1/+1 for each forest that you control. So if you're playing a mono green deck, makes sense that you're going to have a bunch of forests, right? So if you can get that, plus your generous visitor and your comedy of transients and stuff like that to get like a very large and powerful creature that's swinging in, then it can just win you the game by itself. Just equip it and swing in for lethal. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's a pretty cool deck. And I don't know if Glorious Sunrise is necessary in the deck, but the rest of it looks pretty sweet and would be kind of cool to try out sometime. All right, and then the last deck, this is not that special, but it's a control deck that somebody's been doing well with. That same person, Steel Grip, and I think kind of cool to see the Witness the Future back in there, and Thirst for Knowledge is picking up some slots as well in the control deck, something that we don't see that often. And I feel like Teferi has been powerful, but I haven't seen a lot of control decks doing well with it. So always glad whenever I see someone else having success in the things that I think should be good. So if you like blue white, this might be a version of the deck that can win for you and do well for you. All right, wrapping up, the last thing to look at are the tournaments of recent, and not a whole lot to go with this time. There were two standard tournaments, both of them won by Grixis mid-range. Again, Grixis very strong in best of 3 for standard. But there was one interesting deck. This Boros aggro makes use of Bloodthirsty Adversary, has the what is it, Baird, the Argivian Recruiter, and then the other just good red and white aggressive cards like Kumano and Hopeful Initiate and Thalia and stuff like that. And Recommission is like a spell that you can bring back a creature, it gets +1/+1, and you can also cast it with your Bloodthirsty Adversary to have like a 3/3 and bring something else that might also be like a 3/3 and swing in for 6 damage kind of out of nowhere. So that's pretty cool. Also has Lightning Strike, which you can cast with the Bloodthirsty Adversary to get lethal. So lots of pretty cool synergies, but it's all focused around those aggro decks. So basically kind of a merging of the red and the white aggro lists together into one. Yeah, I mean, definitely creative. Love to see it. Not really my style of deck, but if you're an aggressive lover and you've played the red and you've played the white, maybe you want to try the Boros one. A little bit of both worlds in there. All right, yeah, that's pretty much it for the decks and what's going on in the meta. I will say that, yeah, the format is pretty settled now. Yeah, Grixis and Mardu Angels probably best in the best of 3. Esper Legends, I would say closely behind those two in best of 3, and Mono White and Azorius Soldiers are definitely top spots in best of 1. I think the advantage in best of 1 right now is that if you have any deck that has a lot of sweepers, you're going to have a favorable matchup against those top 2 decks, and so you can usually get, you know, an above 55% win rate with the deck as long as you're targeting aggro. So yeah, if you want to brew something and have fun, make sure you keep that in mind when you're playing best of 1 or best of 3. And then last thing, the new set is not coming out for a long time, February 10th, but they have been releasing a few spoilers for the Phyrexian All Is One set. So if you want to check those out, you can see those you know, on the Magic website or wherever you see your card spoilers. But seems like things are taking a little bit of a darker turn. A lot of our favorite planeswalkers and stuff are going to be in trouble, and then also they spoiled some of the Phyrexian Praetors, the last one. So yeah, you can check that out. And just be careful if you do go searching. There was a big leak of cards of the like some people who I guess got to see the cards early and took a bunch of photos and spoiled them. So if you care about spoilers, yeah, be careful when you're searching online. If you don't care about spoilers, then you can check that out, because there are a lot of crazy cards that got spoiled, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, that is it for this Monday Meta update. So hope you can get out there, have some fun. Don't worry about playing the best decks. Try some things new, make some brews, and until next time, see ya.